Unsettling Fire. Chapter 1. The fluorescent lights in the Wolfe Enterprises lobby buzzed faintly above Angie Harper's head as she sat stiffly in the leather chair, clutching her purse like a lifeline. She smoothed her pencil skirt, trying to appear composed even as anxiety twisted her stomach. This was the fourth interview this week, and the one she needed most. Her mother's hospital bills weren't going to pay themselves. The call from the billing office that morning had made that painfully clear. She glanced at her reflection in the mirrored elevator doors. Minimal makeup, loose curls tucked behind her ears, a navy blouse that didn't scream desperation. "Miss Harper?" A poised assistant approached, tablet in hand. "Mr. Wolfe will see you now?" Angie stood quickly, her heels echoing as she followed the assistant down a long corridor. Glass walls, polished floors, money in every square inch. When the door to the CEO's office opened, she was braced for a panel of interviewers, or at least a stiff HR manager. What she didn't expect was a man standing alone behind a sleek desk, tall and composed in a dark navy suit. His presence hit her like a cold wave, steady, commanding, unreadable. He looked up, their eyes met, and Angie's breath hitched, not because he was intimidating, though he was, but because something in his gaze made her skin prickle. Sharp grey eyes, calculating and cool. He said nothing at first, just studied her. She straightened her shoulders. "Mr. Wolfe, thank you for meeting with me. You look different," he said abruptly, his voice low and deliberate. "Older?" She blinked, startled. Excuse me?" He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." She obeyed, her unease rising. Had they met before? She didn't think so, but his tone said otherwise. "You applied for the executive secretary position," he said, scanning her resume. "Graduated with honors, administrative experience, no criminal record." He looked up. "That last part's reassuring." Angie forced a light laugh. "I try to keep things boring." He didn't smile. "I run a high-pressure operation," he said. "I don't tolerate mistakes. The last secretary lasted 3 weeks." She nodded. "I understand. I can handle it." His gaze didn't waver. "You'll manage my calendar, handle confidential communications, and travel with me when necessary. Late nights, weekends, no exceptions." "I'm available for all of that." "You'll also live on the property." She blinked. "I'm sorry, live where?" "I value discretion," he said. "The estate has staff quarters. You'll move in by the end of the week. Is that a problem?" Angie hesitated. Her instincts told her to run. But then her mother's pale face in that hospital bed came to mind. The unpaid bills, the fear in her chest. "No problem." Something flickered behind his eyes. Not satisfaction, something darker. "Good," he said simply. "Welcome to Wolfe Enterprises, Miss Harper." Chapter 2. 2 weeks into the job, Angie had stopped trying to figure him out. Matthew Wolfe was never outright rude. He was simply ice, efficient, controlled. Every word clipped and measured. He rarely made eye contact unless he was giving orders. But then there were the moments. The way his gaze would catch on her when he thought she wasn't looking. The silence that stretched too long when they stood too close. The shift in the air when his hand brushed hers as he passed her a file. And the worst part, she noticed all of it, felt it in her bones, like now. She stood at his office door, file in hand, stomach tight. "You asked for the board minutes," she said, voice level. He looked up from his laptop. "Put them on the desk." She crossed the room, heels tapping softly against the marble floor, and placed the file on the corner of his pristine desk. He didn't look at the papers. He looked at her, lingering. "Anything else?" she asked, pulse fluttering. His expression didn't change, but something passed through his eyes. A flicker, as if he had no right to notice, but he had. "Send the revised schedule to my email," he said, eyes returning to his screen. "That's all." Dismissed, she turned to go, heart pounding for reasons she didn't understand. That night, she sat in her staff apartment on the edge of his estate, unable to shake the feeling that he was always watching, always thinking about her. And when she fell asleep, she dreamed of grey eyes and hands that lingered just a second too long. Something was brewing between them. She could feel it in her blood. But she didn't know yet if it would burn her or set her free. Chapter 3. It was nearly midnight when Angie closed her laptop and rubbed her eyes. The office was quiet, the city skyline glowing behind floor-to-ceiling windows. Everyone else had gone home hours ago, everyone except him. She glanced toward Matthew's office. The light was still on. For the past 2 weeks she'd been keeping her head down, learning the rhythm of his world. He was exacting, ruthless with deadlines, and frustratingly unreadable. But he hadn't fired her, and that felt like a win. She gathered the financial report he'd asked for and walked down the hall, heels silent against the carpet. The door was slightly ajar. She knocked once, then pushed it open. Matthew was at his desk, jacket off, white shirt sleeves rolled up, collar loosened. His tie was draped over the back of the chair like a careless afterthought. He looked tired, human. He glanced up. "You're still here." "I wanted to finish the projections," she said, walking in. "You asked for them before morning." She placed the folder on his desk. He didn't look at it. "You didn't have to stay late," he said. "You said they were a priority." A pause stretched between them. Then, quietly, "You take this job seriously." She shrugged, unsure what to say. "I need it." His eyes locked on hers. "I know." The silence that followed was different. It wasn't strained or professional. It hummed with something unsaid. She turned to leave, but stopped when he spoke again. "You really don't remember me, do you?" The words were soft, too soft. She turned slowly. "What do you mean?" Matthew's expression was blank now, the softness gone. His voice clipped. "Nothing. You can go." "No, wait, what did you mean?" she asked, taking a step back toward him. He stood suddenly and walked around the desk. His height and closeness hit her like a wave. "You said I looked different during the interview," she said, heart racing. "Have we met before?" He stared at her like he was trying to decide whether to tell her or destroy her. And then, very quietly, "Some things are better forgotten." She swallowed hard, confused and rattled. "If I did something—" "You didn't," he said quickly, then added colder, "Not exactly." The room crackled with tension. Angie's voice wavered. "Why do you keep looking at me like that?" His jaw tightened. He stepped even closer. "Like what?" "Like you hate me and want me all at once." His eyes darkened. "Maybe I do." The breath caught in her throat. Her body stilled, but inside, everything spun. And then, he leaned in. So close she could smell the faint scent of his cologne. Clean, dark, intoxicating. His lips hovered just inches from hers. His fingers brushed her waist. Her heart thundered. And then, he stepped back, as if scalded. "I'll see you tomorrow, Miss Harper," he said curtly, voice cool again. She stared at him, stunned, her skin still tingling. When she walked out of the office, her legs felt weak, her thoughts scrambled. He was unraveling her, and she didn't even know why. Chapter 4. The private jet was sleek, silent, and too damn cold. Angie kept her gaze on the clouds as the city disappeared below. She didn't trust herself to look at Matthew, not after what happened, or almost happened, last night in his office. She hadn't slept. Not really. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt his breath near her mouth, his fingers at her waist, the pull that had almost dragged them both over the edge. And now they were on a 2-day business trip to San Diego, just the two of them. Of course, He'd barely spoken a word since they boarded, except to ask if she preferred sparkling or still water. Professional, polished, icy. She hated how much she still felt him. They landed, were chauffeured to the beachfront hotel Wolfe Enterprises had recently invested in, and Angie tried to focus on her tasks. She reviewed documents, she set up meetings. She avoided the way Matthew's gaze lingered a second too long when she wasn't looking. But that night, everything snapped. They had dinner with the hotel's investors. Angie wore a fitted black dress, simple but elegant. Matthew wore power like a second skin. He was all cool charm and control until the drive back. She was scrolling through emails in the back seat when he said, "There was a problem with the reservation." She looked up. "What kind of problem?" "There's only one suite available." She blinked. "One suite?" He didn't look at her. "There's a one-bedroom and a living room. The hotel is overbooked." Of course it was. She followed him to the suite, trying not to feel the weight of it all. The king bed in the main room, the glass wall overlooking the ocean, the storm outside, wind and water hitting the windows like warning. She turned toward him. "There's a pull-out couch, I'll take that." "No," he said, slipping off his jacket. "I'll take it." She frowned. "You're the CEO. I've slept on worse." A pause stretched. She moved toward the window, arms crossed. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Looking at me like you want me, then pretending you don't." He didn't answer. She turned to face him. "Is this a game to you?" And that was when the fire broke loose. He crossed the space between them in seconds. One hand cupped her face, the other wrapped around her waist. "This isn't a game," he growled. "You've been under my skin for years, Angie. You don't even remember what you did to me, and still, I can't stop wanting you." She barely had time to breathe before his mouth crashed against hers. It wasn't sweet, it wasn't soft. It was years of rage and hunger and longing, all colliding in one reckless kiss. She kissed him back, because she wanted him too. Clothes hit the floor in pieces. He lifted her against the wall, her legs around his waist, his hands rough but reverent. She clung to him like she was trying to find her balance, but he had already taken it from her. They didn't speak when it was over, just lay tangled in the dark, breathless and raw. In the morning, he was distant again, quiet, controlled. But that night, it happened again. And again the next. It wasn't just lust anymore, it was something else. Something they didn't dare name. But it couldn't last. Not with secrets still between them. Not with her heart already halfway broken. Chapter 5. Angie stood at the edge of the conference room, clipboard in hand, her mind still tangled in the nights they hadn't spoken of since returning from San Diego. Matthew hadn't touched her since. Not at the office, not at home. She should have been relieved. It had all been a mistake, hadn't it? Just lust, just chemistry, just... Her heart clenched as she looked at him across the room, deep in conversation with a woman Angie hadn't seen before. Tall, polished, stunning. She touched his arm casually, too casually, and laughed at something he said. Matthew smiled back, and that smile, calm, warm, easy, wasn't one she'd ever received. Angie turned away before the twist in her chest could finish tightening. Later that day, while dropping off a revised itinerary to his office, she heard it. The door was slightly ajar. She wasn't eavesdropping, not really, but his voice stopped her. "She's perfect, elegant, poised. You've known her forever," said a man, probably Richard, his head of PR. "If you're serious about making a move, the board will be pleased. A stable relationship looks good." A pause, then Matthew's voice. "We'll make the announcement after the gala." Angie felt the blood drain from her face. She didn't wait to hear more. Her fingers were numb as she walked back to her desk, her vision blurring at the edges. So that was what she was. A temporary itch, a distraction. She'd given him everything, her body, her trust, and he was going to marry someone else. And she'd have to stand at his side, arranging schedules and flights and press conferences while pretending her heart wasn't shattering a little more each day. She couldn't stay. She packed her things after hours, alone in the office, left her resignation letter on his desk, neatly folded. Then she vanished. She took a small admin job at a local non-profit across town. It barely paid the bills, but it was enough to keep her mother's treatment going. Enough to breathe again, even if every breath still burned. And when she lay awake at night, she told herself she didn't miss him. Didn't miss the way he looked at her like she was both his weakness and his cure. Didn't miss the man who, for one fragile moment, had made her feel like she was more than just someone passing through. She didn't miss him. She lied. Chapter 6. Matthew Wolfe hadn't noticed how quiet the house had become until she was gone. The kitchen no longer smelled faintly of the herbal tea she liked. The hallway didn't echo with the soft tap of her heels. Her desk at the office sat eerily pristine. No sticky notes in her handwriting, no sharp-eyed reminders on his calendar, no peppermint candy tucked in the drawer. She had vanished. No explanation, no call, no goodbye. At first, he was furious. He tore open the envelope she'd left on his desk and found only a short, impersonal resignation. Not even a sentence explaining why. He called her, texted, emailed. Nothing. When her apartment turned out to be empty and her number disconnected, that fury turned into something far worse. Panic. He couldn't sleep, couldn't work. Her absence clawed at his chest with a sickening persistence. He searched for her through every contact he had, hired someone to track down where she'd gone. It wasn't until a week later that he learned she was working as an admin assistant at a local non-profit in a modest brick building on the east side. No security, no driver, no fortress to keep him out. Just Angie sitting at a desk near a window, focused on a stack of papers. She looked thinner, tired, still beautiful. He didn't knock, just pushed open the door and walked in. Her eyes widened when she saw him. Matthew! His name on her lips nearly unraveled him. I need to talk to you, he said. Her hands trembled slightly as she stood. There's nothing to talk about. There is. You didn't even let me explain. Explain what? She said, voice raw. That you were using me, that you planned to marry someone else all while we... He stepped forward. I never planned to marry anyone. I heard you, she snapped. The gala, the board, she's perfect. Realization hit him like a blow to the ribs. Angie, that wasn't about a proposal. That woman, Camille, she's an old friend. Richard was pushing the idea for the board's sake. I never agreed to it. She faltered. Then why? Why didn't you say anything? Because I didn't know what I wanted until you left. He raked a hand through his hair. The truth is, I hired you because I remembered you, from years ago. You humiliated me, and I thought, maybe I could make you feel what I once felt. Her mouth parted in shock. But you didn't even remember me, he said, voice quieter now. And somewhere between all the pretending, I stopped wanting revenge. I started wanting you. Silence stretched between them, thick and electric. I'm sorry, he whispered. Angie's eyes shone, but she didn't speak, so he stepped closer. I miss you, every day, every night. If I ruined everything, I'll spend the rest of my life fixing it. The air shifted. Then she did something that stole his breath completely. She reached for his hand. Chapter 7. Matthew hadn't expected her to take his hand, not after everything, not after the way he'd let pride and pain drive a wedge between them. But the moment her fingers curled around his, something shifted in him. Something that had been wound tight for years, finally unspooled. Angie looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. Tell me everything. So he did. They sat on the park bench just outside her non-profit's office, where the afternoon sun cast a soft golden glow over the trees, and Matthew told her about the past. He told her about the day he was fired, the humiliation, the rage, the way he'd seen her laughing that day with her cousin and assumed she was in on the cruel joke. I thought you knew what he did, that you were part of it. You never looked at me again, just walked off like I was nothing. I didn't know, she said, eyes glassy. I didn't even remember you from back then, not because you didn't matter, but because I never saw what was done to you. I was young, stupid. I'm so sorry, Matthew. He reached up and cupped her cheek. It doesn't matter anymore, not after everything that's happened. I should have been honest. I should have told you what I was feeling instead of punishing you for something you didn't do. Her breath hitched. And what were you feeling? Matthew exhaled slowly. I couldn't stop thinking about you. The moment you walked into my office, everything I'd buried came flooding back. Anger, yes, but also the way you made me feel before it all went wrong. And then, when I got to know you, really know you— He hesitated, then leaned closer. It stopped being about the past. It became about you. Her eyes shimmered. I thought you hated me. I thought I did too. But I never could. I tried. God, I tried. His voice cracked just enough to reveal the ache in his chest. I love you, Angie. I've loved you since before I knew how to, and I'm asking you now, not as your boss or someone trying to make amends, but as a man who wants to build something real with you. She looked at him like he was breaking her open and mending her all at once. Then, with a small, trembling smile, she whispered, You really are a mess, Matthew Wolfe. He laughed through the knot in his throat. Hopeless. She leaned in. Good thing I'm a fixer. Their kiss was slow, unlike the desperate, heated nights they'd shared before. This one was soft, deep, and full of promises. Of forgiveness, of a new beginning. Later, Matthew drove her back to the mansion, not as his employee, but as the woman he wanted to build a life with. She moved into the master bedroom. Her laughter filled the house again. Her touch undid him in ways that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with love. The fire between them didn't die, it only burned brighter,